Welcome to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman, the podcast dedicated to helping you build the business of your dreams and live the life you always hoped for, with valuable and fun tips and info to make your life easier and more fun. And now, here's your host, a man who sprinkles metal shavings on his breakfast cereal just for fun, Jason Silverman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. I'm your host, Jason Silverman, and I'm thrilled to share some time with you once again today. As you know, I'm always on the hunt for interesting as well as super smart, real deal guests. And I got to tell you, today's show is right on par with that. I want to introduce my listeners to somebody who's truly been there and done that. And selfishly speaking, I'm really excited to pick his brain for your benefit today. Now, for the folks who I work with in any of my coaching programs, my mastermind group, or through Powerful Words Character Development, All-Star Cheer Sites, or Dance Sites Done Right, you know how much I focus on the importance of making super smart and sound financial decisions, right? Well, this show is going to help us do just that. Now, today, it's going to be my honor and privilege to share an amazing resource with you. You're going to love today's guest. He's got a ton of valuable info about what I feel to be a super hot topic to help you succeed, as well as a fun way to allow you to do it. So I want you to strap yourself in. Today's show is going to be awesome. As I'm sure you already know, I'm committed to helping business owners to become more successful, enjoy your career more, and in general, make your life significantly more fun. We only go around this ride once, so let's make it one hell of a ride, right? Okay, boys and girls, it is now that time. I want you to stop surfing Facebook, put away your phone, your tablet, your dog, your cat, your child, your spouse, anything that might possibly distract you from today's show. You're about to get some great and immediately implementable information, and I don't want you to miss even a second of it. So, before we get going, I want to give you a little bit of background about our guest today. All right. As a certified public accountant and financial planner, the president of Serapis & Company and CEO of the Rich Habits Institute, Tom Corley is passionate about financial independence. Tom trains businesses, individuals, and students how to be financially successful through his Rich Habits educational program. Tom has authored several books, including his #1 Amazon best-selling personal finance book, Rich Habits, and the top 100 cheapest places to retire in the U.S. book series. Great stuff, great stuff. Tom, welcome to The Real Deal. I'm thrilled to have you today.
Jason, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. So before we get started, for those who haven't yet had the opportunity and pleasure of meeting you or hearing you speak or reading your books, do me a favor, take a second, share your story with our listeners. What are you passionate about? What makes you tick? Who is Tom Corley?
Well, I started out in life, we were in a very wealthy family, and at the age of 9, almost overnight, we lost just about everything, Jason, except our house. My dad somehow kept the house. We lived on one of the most prestigious areas in Staten Island called Toad Hill. Mm-hmm. And I guess my dad was probably worth about, in today's dollars, about $20 million at the time. And then his entire tool and die distributorship business, his main warehouse burned down, and we lost everything. He lost his entire business, and he spent the next 2 years just trying to squeeze any money out of anybody he could get money from, creditors, insurance companies. He got pennies on the dollar and basically had to start all over again. So we went from being rich to being poor literally overnight. And then, fast forward, I think probably 2004, around that time frame, I had taken over the helm here at Serapis & Company, a CPA firm. And I don't think I was here for more than 6 months, and a small business client demanded to see me. His bank had turned his line of credit, which means they shut down his line of credit and converted it to a term loan, so he couldn't access any additional capital, and he wasn't going to make payroll that Friday, so he was coming to meet me to see if I had any magic in my bag to pull out of my bag to help him with a banking relationship any banking relationships I had. And I told him I couldn't help him on such short notice. Those banking relationships take years to develop, and they're not going to give anybody a line of credit, no matter who I am, Tom Corley. So he broke down and started crying right there. And he was a big burly guy, Jason. He wasn't a shrinking violet. He owned a auto body shop, auto repair shop, and he had been in his family's business for years. And he just very slowly, decrementally, just drove it into the ground through his, as I found out, through his bad habits. But what really started me down this path of studying the daily habits of the rich and poor was him looking in my eyes crying and asking me, what is it that he was doing wrong? Where was he failing in life? What is it that other wealthy people do that he's not doing? And it just hit an emotional chord. And I started doing the research, and it ended up evolving into a 5-year study of 233 wealthy people and 128 poor people. And then I analyzed the data, broke it out into the two groups, and I nearly fell off my chair when I realized, my gosh, the difference between the two groups is in their daily habits. The things that they do every day separate the rich from the poor. And it's things that they're not even aware of that they're doing, things that they're not doing that they're not even aware of. So I tried to isolate those 10 core keystone habits that separated the rich from the poor, and my goal was to just do training, try and train small businesses and individuals. But I had so much success with some of the individuals in my training, my learning sessions, that I decided to write a book about it, and that's how Rich Habits came to be. That's
fantastic. It really, really is. Well, let's dive in, because I have a ton of questions on this that I would love to pick your brain on. So, I knew that you claim that you can tell right away if somebody's either rich or poor simply by asking them how many junk food calories they eat each day. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, what I discovered was that rich people and poor people have way different daily habits, and I found a direct correlation between having good daily success habits and wealth accumulation. I also found a correlation between having bad daily habits and poverty. So when I ask someone, how many calories do you consume, how many junk food calories do you consume in a day, and if they tell me, I don't know, probably a lot, more than 300 or 400, well, I know that 97% from my research, 97% of the poor people, they ate more than 300 junk food calories a day, and 70% of the wealthy didn't. And so I can go on asking questions. I could ask them, for example, how many nonfiction books do you read a month? And if they tell me they don't, then I know that they're probably poor, because 85% of the rich people did read 2 or more of those nonfiction books, mainly for self-education, and 85% of the poor people didn't. So I have aerobic exercise. How does aerobic exercise have anything to do with wealth creation? Well, I found out it does, and that's a more broad scope topic. But what I found out is that 76% of the rich people exercised aerobically for at least 4 days a week. 23% of the poor people had that rich habit. So, that means 77% didn't. So I can ask these, seemingly innocuous questions, and I can paint a picture of that person very quickly, whether they're rich or poor, or on track to be rich or poor.
You know what? You've started down this path, so let me dig in a little deeper. What would you say are the primary habits that separate the rich from the poor? Obviously, we spoke about junk food. We talked about cardio. What else is there?
Yeah, well, reading 30 minutes a day for self-education, that's like the number one rich habit. 88% of the wealthy people did that. Only 2% of the poor people did that. 98% of the poor people didn't read on a daily basis for purposes of self-education. That was a big one. The other thing was developing strong, valuable relationships. What I found was that the wealthy people, by choice, there's something called the law of association that they embrace. They, by choice, associated with other successful, like-minded people, and poor people, they associated with primarily poor people. And why is that important? Well, because I'll give you an example. One of the wealthy individuals in my study, he ran the commodities trading desk for a big bank in New York, and he lost his job. And he called me up to tell me, hey, I may not be as successful as I thought. And I said, why? And he said, well, I just got fired. And this was like 2008, 2009, that time period, when everybody was getting canned. And I said, well, you don't seem too upset about it, because he was laughing. He says, oh no, I'm not worried about it at all. I'm going to take 2 weeks off. They gave me a nice severance package. I'm going to take 2 weeks off, just chill out with the family, and then I'll get a job working somewhere. And I said, how could you be so confident? He said, well, I mentored so many people. There's so many people on the street that I mentored. It probably won't take me a few phone calls. Well, he called me about a month later and said to tell me that he had actually gotten a better job with more pay, higher bonus potential than he had before, because he got it from someone who worked for him for like 12 years and was now running a trading desk somewhere else. So this is what wealthy people do. They mentor other people. They're generous with their knowledge, and they share their mistakes and their misfortunes and the failures in life, so that the people that they're mentoring won't have to go through that. And that's actually, mentoring is the fastest way to wealth accumulation, I found in my research. So there's a lot of things that the wealthy people do that the poor people don't even know about. They're not doing it because they don't even know that they should be doing it.
Right. We know not what we know not, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So let me ask this. If you're poor, what can you do right away to get on the track, back to financial success?
Well, one of the important things, it's rich habit number one. It's really this self-assessment or awareness habit, I like to call it. You need to become aware, firstly, of what you're doing wrong. So you've got to track your habits. I suggest doing it for a week or two. Have a pad of paper. Just write down, any habits that you have, good or bad. Just write them down. You can put them in 2 columns, good habits, bad habits. And then once you get a list of all of your bad habits, now that's called tracking. So now you've tracked all of your bad habits in a week or 2 week period. And it's a very simple process to convert those bad habits, or what I call poverty habits, into rich habits. For example, let's say you don't do any reading at all for self-education. Well, that's a poverty habit. Your new rich habit is, I read 20 minutes today for self-education. Let's say you do absolutely no aerobic exercise, aerobic exercise is a rich habit. And it's good for the brain, and it increases oxygen into the brain, which helps increase your IQ and makes you smarter and healthier. Well, if you don't do that, that's a poverty habit. So your new rich habit is, I exercise 20 minutes aerobically today. So you basically take all of your deficits, all your poverty habits, and you convert them to rich habits, creating a rich habits checklist. And what I strive for every day, Jason, is my goal every day is to get 30% of my rich habits accomplished. And you might be sitting there saying, 30%, that's nothing. But the point is that these rich habits are so powerful because they're keystone habits. They overpower other bad habits. You don't need that many. You only need 2 or 3 of them to tip your habit seesaw in the right direction and get you on the path to success.
I love this conversation. This is fabulous. Let me ask this though. Who are the rich and poor that you're referring to here?
Yeah, well, I broke it out into the 2 groups. The rich and poor it's a 2-part test for each. For the rich, $160,000 of gross income and $3.2 million in net liquid assets. That puts you in the rich category, in my study anyway. And the poor group, they're individuals who make less than $35,000 a year and have less than $5,000 in net liquid assets.
Less than 5,000. Okay. Understood. Now, everyone loves to play the blame game, so let me ask this question. Who do you personally believe is to blame for the poverty problem in America?
The parents are to blame. Parents are the cause of the wealth gap and income inequality in America. It's not the government. It's not Wall Street. It's it's not policies. It's not that poor people are lazy. Habits are generational. We pick up most of our habits from our parents. In fact, my book that I just came out with, Rich Kids, talks about how to mentor your kids to be successful in life. And the reason I wrote that book was because the wealthy people, by and large, in my study, learned their rich habits from two places: their parents primarily, and secondarily they learned it from some mentor that they stumbled across in life, which is a rare thing. So these rich habits and these poverty habits, we pick them up from our parents. They're to blame for poverty, and they're the reason why, for the most part, you're successful.
Cool. You know, in your book, Rich Habits, you know, you mentioned that wealthy people create a unique type of good luck and that poor people create a unique type of bad luck. Would you mind kind of delving into this?
Yeah, sure. There's what I found in my research is that there's 4 types of luck. There's random good luck. That's, you know, lightning striking, the lottery, you know, an inheritance. I had a friend that inherited $1 million. He didn't even know his great aunt had $1 million. He inherited $1 million. That's random good luck. Random bad luck is when something horrific happens, you know, cancer, a disability that you're born with. That's, you know, my father's warehouse burning down. That's random bad luck. Then there's two other types of luck: opportunity good luck and detrimental bad luck. Opportunity good luck is the byproduct of doing certain things every day that move you forward towards your goals and your life dream. They're like they're the rich habits, essentially, and they are like snowflakes on a mountainside. They just accumulate. They don't create instant overnight success, but they build up and they build up, and over time it becomes so significant that you have this avalanche in your life of good luck, of opportunity, good luck. It might be a bonus, it might be a raise, it might be a job offer that came out of the blue from a competitor. So, and then poor people have this detrimental bad luck, and that's the byproduct of having poverty habits. Just like you know, the avalanche of success, there's an avalanche of failure. Those poverty habits accumulate over time, and you know, next thing you know, you might have a heart attack because you're not exercising. You might you know, become obese, and that might create diabetes, and you know, that creates a disability and affects your ability to work and earn income. So detrimental bad luck is the type of luck that poor people create by having poverty habits.
Makes sense. Makes sense. On your website, richhabits.net, I notice you say that wealthy people use certain strategies to make themselves unfireable. You know, I think this is really important, especially in the economic times we've got right now. Would you mind sharing some of those strategies?
Yeah, sure. You know, one of the things wealthy people, to wealthy people, relationships are like gold. It's the currency of the wealthy. So they're constantly building forging these strong, valuable relationships. In fact, my dad, that was one of the rich habits my dad had. When he lost his business, he reached out to, he used to run congressional campaigns for Jack Murphy, who was the congressman in Staten Island and Brooklyn. He did that for seven terms. And he ran Mayor Beam's campaign in New York. He ran RFK's campaign in the Staten Island, Brooklyn area when he was running for president. So he built all these strong, valuable relationships. And when everything went to hell, he reached out to his relationships, and most of those relationships lifted him up out of the abyss and helped him survive. They didn't help him become rich again, but they just helped him survive. So wealthy people are doing things like the hello call, happy birthday call, the life event call. The hello call is just a reconnaissance call. It's gathering information on people that you want to develop a relationship with. You want to learn everything there is to know about them, their families. The happy birthday calls is essentially keeps your relationships on life support, because at least once a year you're going to reach out to them and wish them a happy birthday. And it has to be a call. It can't be an email. It can't be a Facebook. That doesn't work. You want to develop the relationship by talking to them and gathering information. The hello call and the happy birthday call are significant there. And the interesting thing about the happy birthday call that I found, because I've been doing this since 2007, is there's something called the reciprocal happy birthday call. 25% of the people that I call on their birthday now call me back to wish me a happy birthday. They do it primarily out of guilt, but also because they feel like, hey, I think they're valuable enough to call them on their birthday, so they reciprocate. And then there's the life event call, which is that's the type of relationship building call that puts your relationships on steroids. It makes the roots to your relationship tree grow real deep, real quick. And I used the hello call and the life event call to make $60,000 in about 3 hours, and that happened back in 2008, 2009. I had been forging a relationship with someone who was a bigwig at a pharmaceutical company here, and I just knew. I met him at a networking event, another rich habit that I adopted from my research. I started networking. I met him, started trying to build a relationship, through the hello call, and gathered a lot of information on him and his family. One day, there was an article in the Asbury Park Press in South Jersey, and it had his kid's name in it. It was a free throw shooting contest that his 10-year-old kid had participated in. They made it to the regionals. Well, anyway, he was in North Jersey, so I cut the article out and I faxed it. And the only reason his kid was in it was because someone from South Jersey's kid was in it. So I cut out the article and I faxed it over to him. And Jason, he called me right back, and he had me on the phone for a half an hour talking about this free throw shooting contest. And when I talked to this guy, by the way, I must have mentioned at least half a dozen times every time I talked to him, hey, I do financial planning, if you ever need it. And so he mentioned to me on that call, he said, I seem to recall that you mentioned that you do financial planning, and we both started laughing. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I've got a couple of old 401ks. It's just been sitting there. Maybe you can do something with them. So I met with him the following week and had him pull the latest statements that he had. He pushed the statements over the desk where we were sitting, and lo and behold, he had about $1.4 million in old 401k money that I ended up rolling over and made $60,000 on. So I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, that led me to write Rich Habits, because I realized, my gosh, if this works for me, it's got to work for everybody. I mean, that $60,000, Jason, helped get my kids through college.
Absolutely. And to a lot of folks, that's a nice annual salary.
That's right. And I made it in 3 hours. And I said, this is like, I think I found the Holy Grail. So I never wrote a book before. So I said, well, that's not going to stop me. I got to share this information. So I studied for probably 6 months how to write a book, and then I wrote a book. And I rewrote it 3 times until I got it right. And it became a bestseller. So you know what? It's an example of never let your fears and your doubts hold you back. Just because you're ignorant, it doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
Exactly. How do you know if you're on the right track for financial success?
Well, you kind of have a feeling that things are not going right in your life. You're probably struggling financially. You're eking out a living. You probably don't like your job. So a lot of these emotions are sourcing through you, and so you're on the wrong path. You just don't know why, and that's why it's so important that Rich Habit number 1, just to do that self-assessment, that make yourself aware of what you're doing. Awareness is the key, and once you become aware of your bad habits, you can change them. If you don't become aware of them, if you're ignorant of them, then you're going to continue along that path. So it's really in its entirety, just a feeling, a sense that you're just not making it, and you're not getting anywhere, and you don't know what to do, and you feel out of control and helpless.
Makes sense. Now, do me a favor. This I always find this to be interesting, to kind of put myself in somebody else's shoes. Walk me through a typical day for a wealthy person.
Well, yeah, sure. So what happens with the wealthy people is 44% of them wake up 3 hours or more before they even begin work. So what are they doing with that 3 hours? A lot of them are either preparing, because they're teachers at night, they're adjunct professors, and they're teaching and working at the same time. Some of them are writing. They might write for their company newsletter. They might write for a blog, or they might, they might be writing a book or an article for a magazine. A lot of them do speaking engagements. 23% of them engage in speaking engagements, so they could be preparing a speech that they're going to give to 100 or 200 people. They might they're probably studying, doing some self-education in the morning. They're doing aerobic exercise. They're doing 100 different things that are moving them forward in the morning before any of us even get our head off the pillow. And then when they commute to work, they're listening to audiobooks primarily. They don't listen to the radio. Wealthy people just seem to be averse to listening to the radio. They're listening to podcasts. That's the big thing now, Jason. The industry is exploding, the podcasting industry. So they're downloading these podcasts onto their iPhones, and they're listening to them at work, on their commute to work, whether they're driving or they're taking a subway. And then when they get to work, the interesting thing I found is wealthy people structure what they do during the day. For example, they don't immediately check their email. They have a time slotted when they're going to look at their email. It might be 11 a.m. to 12, right before lunch. They have a time slotted for when they're going to actually return and make phone calls, which might be around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when we're all kind of getting tired and our biorhythms are going in the wrong direction. So getting on the phone and talking to people kind of activates your brain, gets you going again. So and then during lunch, when they're taking a lunch, they're not just eating lunch. They're majority of them are networking or having business lunches, meeting with business relationships, people that they want to develop relationships with, and so in some cases doing speaking engagements. I started doing speaking engagements at lunchtime because that's what wealthy people were doing. So I said, well, I'm going to do the same thing, it makes better use of your time. And then then at the of course they're trying to accomplish their to-do list in between their structured time slots, getting things done, and then they're preparing for the next day as their day's winding down by preparing a to-do list for the following day. And then when they, of course, commute back home, they're listening to audiobooks or something enlightening or educational. And here's the interesting thing: 2 to 3 days out of the week, they're not going right home. They might be going to a board of directors meeting for a nonprofit organization. They might be coaching kids in sports, which is important because you're developing relationships with the parents, and who knows where those parents come from, what their backgrounds are. So you're forging these strong relationships through coaching. They might, like I said, might be doing speaking engagements, might be teaching, might be doing any number of 100 different things 2 to 3 days out of the week. And then, it's not an accident that they're successful. They're just doing these real productive, rich habits every single day.
I think this will be sort of telling then. Then do me a favor then. Walk me through a typical day of a poor person. Yeah,
well, poor people, they get up within enough time to get dressed and commute to work. And when they get to work, they're probably spending about 20 to 30 minutes chatting with their colleagues and, the water cooler stuff. They might get around to really getting into work at, 9, 10 o'clock, and then they break for lunch, and they, again, they're sitting with either colleagues or by themselves eating lunch. Really, the time that they're spending isn't productive. And then, they'll be checking their email all during the day, and they'll be returning phone calls as they come in. They're completely moving from multitasking. They call it multitasking, but the brain, there's no such thing as multitasking, as I found out in my research. The brain can only concentrate on one task at a time. So you're constantly moving from one thing to another and trying to regroup and figure out what you were working on, half an hour ago. And that takes time, 5 or 10 minutes to get back up to speed. And then, when the clock hits 5, they're shooting back home. And, an interesting thing is that, and of course, when they get home, they eat dinner, they watch TV or read. If they're reading for recreational purposes. The interesting thing about that part of their day, and it's the one question that really changed the whole scope of my Rich Habits research is when I ask the question, what do you do when you finish at work? What do you do with your time, between the time that you leave work and you finally get home? And the poor people, their response was, well, I eat dinner. I'm very stressed out. I had a hard day at work. So I eat dinner and I watch TV and I relax. And then I go to bed and I do the same thing all over again the next day. So it's just a whole different mindset between how wealthy people and poor people utilize their time and perceive what they do during the day.
Clearly. One of the big questions that, I'm always asked, and I love this, is, how have you found that wealthy people accumulate just so much wealth?
Well, it doesn't happen overnight. What generally happens is they're doing these rich habits every day, and they're moving forward, and they're achieving goals, and they're being promoted, and they're given more responsibility at work, and they're constantly going above and beyond their job description, and so they get higher bonuses. They're providing value-added services to whoever they work for, even if they work for themselves, and which nobody works for themselves. They work for a customer or a client. So they're providing these value-added services, and so they get, if you're a small business, you're getting these referrals because people say, hey, Jason, he does a great job coaching. I mean, you got to use him. I mean, he turned my business around. So you get these referrals from other quality sources, and then that just builds, and it continues to build. And then the other thing that they do, wealthy people, they subscribe to something I call the 80-20 rule. It's there's three ways to build wealth. There's live below your means, expand your means, or do both. And the wealthiest do both. The just moderately wealthy, they live below their means, and or they just expand their means. So when they're living below their means or they're expanding their means, they're doing things they're living below their means. They're living off of 80% of what they make, and putting away the 20%, and that just accumulates. That it's the power of the compounding nature of money is so impressive that it may take 10 years for them to get to 100,000, but it may only take 5 years for that 100 to turn into 200, and then that 200 to turn into 500,000, or might only take 5 or 7 years or whatever. So they're constantly trying to live below their means, and then they're constantly trying to expand their means by doing certain things on the side, maybe building a side business, something that's a hobby that they're passionate about turns into a business, and they, whenever you're doing something it's not work. So they're accumulating wealth by those three wealth building schemes: living below your means, expanding your means, or doing both.
Perfect. Great answer. Great answer. Folks, it is time for our resource of the week. So, Tom, let me ask this. How can my listeners find out more about you, where to get your book, and really how you help entrepreneurs to be more successful?
Well, Jason, they can go. I have a great website, richhabits.net. There's so much in the way of resources at richhabits.net. There's all of my research articles are on there. In fact, my publicist tells me, please stop posting your research articles. You're giving your information away for free. I don't care. I'm doing it. I won't. Nobody's going to stop me because that information is my life work. So they can go on there and get all my research articles. I have free reports that they can download. One of them is how to raise your kids to be successful in life. And then there's a quiz you can take. Are you raising your kids to be on the right track of success or failure? And then there's ebooks that they can download for free. And of course, they can get all my books at richhabits.net or anywhere books are sold, for that matter.
Perfect. All right. I always love to end my podcasts with this question because it's so telling to see where everybody's mindset's at. So, if you could give business owners just one solid piece of advice to either help their business or, more importantly, help them to live a better life, what would that piece of advice be?
I think that the number one thing that they should be doing is expanding their knowledge base in the industry that they're working. Whatever it is that they do for a living, that they have to spend at least 30 minutes a day reading stuff that's related to their career or their industry. That opens up the door to opportunities. It's sort of like taking the blinders off when you expand your knowledge base. You start to see opportunities that were always there that you just didn't see before. So that self-education reading, I think, is if that's all you do out of all of the rich habits, and there's 288 different data points that I track. If that's the only thing that you do, you'll tip your seesaw dramatically in the right direction.
Reading it is. Tom, thank you so much for joining me today. I know how busy your schedule is, and I really appreciate you sharing some of your time and your wisdom with us.
Well, I appreciate it, Jason. And just as an aside, if they want to learn more about me, I'm in Success Magazine this month. Pick up a copy. They have a great article on they focused on 16 of the rich habits, and there's a CD that you can get with my interview. I think it'll be really educational for your listeners.
Fabulous. I will go pick that up actually this afternoon. That's exciting. All right. Folks, that's all the time we've got for today. Thanks for tuning into The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. For more information about private coaching or to see if you benefit from one of the mastermind groups, visit me over at www.jasonmsilverman.com. I look forward to helping you achieve the success that you truly deserve. Until next time, let me leave you with this. Get out there and be the real deal. Set a goal, make a plan, work like hell towards it, and achieve the success that you truly deserve. Now's the time. Get out there and make it happen, folks. Go get them. This has been Jason Silverman, and I hope you have a spectacular week.
You've been listening to The Real Deal with Jason Silverman. To access the great resources mentioned in the show and for information on coaching and mastermind group opportunities with Jason, please visit jasonmsilverman.com.